Good morning and welcome to Godly Play. It's such a beautiful and unusual November day that Godly Play Circle is outside today. So I'm inviting you to join me outside in the warmth and the sun. Come with me around the circle. Glad to see you today. Now, looking at the circle of the church year calendar, last week we were over here at this white piece that was the Feast of All Saints, and today we're moving forward one Sunday, and you can see that we're getting to the end of the green and growing days after Pentecost, and we're coming close to the time of Advent. So change is ahead of us, but right now here we are at the end of the green and growing season. So there was once someone who did such amazing things and said such wonderful things that people began to follow him. And as they followed him, they wondered who he was. And they couldn't help themselves. They just had to ask. And one of the times when they asked him, he said, "I am the light." I see the love of God in you, the light of Christ comes shining through, and I am blessed to be with you, O holy child of God. But this light didn't stay in that one place and in that one time, because he changed the light so it could be in all places and in all times. Watch as I change the light. Don't know if how much you're gonna see when we're outside. Oh, but there it goes. Woohoo! It has a big space to fill. But there it goes. The light is filling this whole area, this whole Godly Play circle that you're joining me in. And wherever we are in this Godly Play time together, this light will be with us. And when we leave this space, the light will go with us too. So, you ready for a story? So our story today takes place as so many stories of the people of God do in the desert. So it's important to have a piece of the desert in our Godly Play circle. We can't have the whole desert, so here's just a little piece of it. So the desert is a dangerous place. There's very little food or water in the desert, so people can die in the desert. As the wind moves, it changes the shape of the desert, so it's easy to get lost and lose your way. People who go into the desert need special clothes. In the daytime, the sun is so hot that it scorches the skin. During the night, it's very cold. And when the wind blows, the sand hits against the face and the hands. So people have to wear special clothes to go into the desert. The desert's a dangerous place. People don't go into the desert unless they have to. This is Jerusalem, the city of David, and these are the walls. And inside the walls of Jerusalem was the temple that was built for the glory of God. Now, people of God lived in Jerusalem inside the walls. And they knew that the presence of God was in the temple. But they thought that the temple was the only place they could go to pray and to get close to God. The big fortified walls of the city of Jerusalem made them feel safe. They felt they were protected from everything. And then the Assyrians came and attacked Jerusalem. It was a terrible time. People fought. People died. People even starved to death. But the Assyrian army could not break through the great walls of Jerusalem. And so they went away. But then the Babylonians came, and this army did not go away. The king of Babylon wanted Jerusalem for himself, and so the great army of Babylon breached the walls of Jerusalem, broke them down, and set the temple on fire. And they took the people of God and marched them out of the city. Very few people were left in the land. The people of God turned to look back at Jerusalem, and they saw the smoke coming up from the embers of the burning temple, and they wondered if they'd ever be able to go home again. But the Babylonian soldiers marched the people of God forward. They had to do what the soldiers told them. They had to march when the soldiers told them to march. They had to eat when the soldiers told them to eat. They could only sleep when the soldiers told them they could sleep. They had to get up early when the soldiers told them to. They had to do everything the soldiers told them. The people of God grew weary, and some of them even died. The people of God were in exile. They could not go home. It was a long, long way. And when the people of God came to Babylon, they hung their harps on the weeping willows and sang sad songs. They thought about Jerusalem and dreamed about the temple. And when they prayed, they even turned and faced Jerusalem during their prayers. But as time went by, and the people of God continued to gather together to read the scriptures, to tell the old stories, and to pray, they realized that God was in this place too, that the presence of God was here in this foreign land. Now, the king of Babylon allowed the people of God to work, and some of them set up small shops, and some of them even worked for the king. So it was a terrible shock when the Persians and the armies came and took the city of Babylon. Now the Persian king allowed some of the people of God to go back, a few. So a few went back with the prophet Ezra. And when they got back to Jerusalem, they began to rebuild the temple. And then the Persian king allowed more of the people of God to return home. This time, they headed out with the prophet Nehemiah through the desert. And when they got back to Jerusalem, they began to repair and rebuild the great walls of the city. The people of God were no longer in exile. They were home again. But you know what happened? Not all of the people of God left Babylon and came back to Jerusalem. They knew that God was with them in this strange and foreign land, and they made a decision to stay there because they knew that God would be with them. So I wonder, what part of this story you liked best? Or, I wonder who's in the circle that you can talk to and tell about your favorite part. I wonder what part of the story is the most important. Wonder what you think. Why you're thinking that. I wonder where you are in the story. What part of this story is about you? I'm wondering if there's anybody in your family who's ever had to leave their home and go into exile, go to a foreign land. I'm wondering if someone has that story in your family, someone who could tell you that story and see where you are in this great story of exile and return. And finally, I wonder if there's any part of this story we can take away and still have all the story that we need. What do you think? How about this? What do you think? Or this? We still have all the story we need? I wonder what you're saying to each other. How about that? These rivers come in a lot of the stories of the people of God. The great Tigris and Euphrates rivers. What about people that stayed in the land? Take those out? Well, I'm really glad that you've joined me today in the circle so we could hear this story of the people of God, this story of exile and return. Now it's time for a blessing. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the love of God surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. See you next week.